We continue our discussion of psychopathology with mental function of perception. First, we'll see how it functions normally, and then we'll move to pathologies of sensation and then of perception. Here's a quick reminder as to how we arbitrarily divided the psyche. We classify perception under intellect, and it allows us to construct and to perceive reality. It has three levels. These are successive levels of processing, and they form a kind of hierarchical system where each higher level builds upon the previous one. The brain does not perceive the world directly, it constructs it step by step. From raw sensations, we get structured perceptions, and from that, we can form internal representations. Sensation is an elementary level of perception. It allows us to reflect individual, isolated sensory qualities of objects. On this level, we don't yet perceive objects holistically. For example, if I were to put some ice cubes on my hand, with only sensations, I'd be able to identify their qualities, such as cold, wet, smooth, etc., and nothing more. For normal functioning of sensation, two things are required. First, normal function of sense organ, and secondly, conscious activity, because, for example, a comatose person would not perceive sensations. On the level of perception, we start to integrate sensory information and recognize objects as such. For this to work properly, we're not only using sense organs and conscious activity, but cognition is used to integrate and synthesize information coming from the objects, and memory is used to name them. Core dimensions of perception are constancy, or stable unchanging connection between external stimuli and mental function of perception, and objectivation. Objects are experienced as meaningful, distinct, and whole, instead of a fragmented amalgam causing sensations. At this level, the brain constructs reality, not just sensations, but objects with meaning. Representation is an internal process of forming mental representations in the absence of external stimuli. Compared to perception, it is fragmented and fleeting, and for it to work properly, we're again using cognition and memory as well. It can be simply remembering what objects felt like. For example, we can create mental representations for ice cubes, snowflakes, or even an iceberg, or it can be a process of recombination, where we remember and take parts of objects we've experienced in the past and put them together. For example, I could picture in my mind a car that is flying with huge feathered wings. This process can be voluntary, where a person has to orient their mental faculties and fully focus on the act of imagining something, or it can be involuntary, where mental representations appear on their own and are intrusive. Before moving to pathologies, I want to take a look at classification of sensations. We can classify them by modality, and they can be visual, auditory, olfactory, and so on. Or we can look at functionality, where they can be extroceptive, meaning coming from external environment, interoceptive, from bodily states, or proprioceptive, with kinesthetic, meaning movement of the body in space, and static, meaning position of the body in space. More interesting is perceivability of bodily sensation criteria. Epicritic are fine, precise, and well-localized sensations accessible for analysis and interpretation. They provide the fine-grained data necessary to recognize shapes, textures, and subtle temperature variations, while protopathic sensations represent more primitive and coarse form of sensory perception. They detect vital and non-discriminatory stimuli like crude touch, pain, and temperature. They are closely connected with vital and emotional experience, and they create a feeling of general vital norm of one's existence.